We have Catharina Nes, who is the Specialist Director from the Norwegian Data Protection Authority, and she has written and researched several reports on big data. So Catharina, over to you.
Thank you. Hello. Last year, the Norwegian Data Protection Authority issued a report on the advertising industry, where we tried to look into this immense, this overwhelming market just described by Wolfie Crystal. So it was a tremendous job trying to understand what is really going on in this sector. More has happened in the advertising industry during the last 2 years than during the last 50 years. The trading of ads has become automated, and with that, there has been the tracking online has been intensified. So what is the reason? The reason behind issuing or launching this report was firstly to address the public, to raise awareness and to generate a public debate. Secondly, we wanted to address the industry to promote accountability in all stages of the marketing process. And thirdly, we wanted to address the data protection environment in Europe. We wanted to encourage DPAs in other jurisdictions to look into how data brokers are operating elsewhere in Europe. And lastly, we wanted to see how the new regulation will fit with the challenges that our report reveals. Personalization of services is a megatrend. As Wolfie Crystal showed in his presentation, personalization is not only happening within the advertising industry, it is something that is happening in sector after sector. Private enterprises and governments, they don't want to reach us as a group of people anymore. They want to reach each one of us with a targeted message. And in order to do that, they need to know as much as possible about us. If not, the message will not be effective. The collection and trading of personal data is a multi-billion-dollar industry. Then the companies with the most data and the best algorithms are the winners in the data race. We give away our personal data in exchange for using great services, useful services, even fantastic services. And personalization in itself is not a harm to privacy. Personalization is a 100% legitimate business model. However, when we have very little insight into what data is collected and how data is used by these companies, it affects the power balance in society. There are companies knowing enormous, they know so much about us, but we don't know what they know and how they know it. In our report, we say something about what an ideal world would look like. And in an ideal world, we would be able to read our newspaper without a horde of unknown companies looking over our shoulders. We would know that information we put into one service would not be used by another service for different purposes. And it would be easy for us to know what our profiles looked like. But this is not the case. This is not what the world looks like today. I'm sure all of you have been annoyed by having adverts stalking you around the web for weeks, possibly months. Every time you visit a website, your profile is auctioned on an ad exchange. Your profile is sent to companies all over the globe who evaluate your profile and consider whether you are an attractive customer or not. If the companies have targeted ads to you previously, you have great value to them than if they never have come across your profile before. So if you regularly delete the cookies in your browser, these companies won't recognize you and you won't have such a huge, and your value on these ad exchanges won't be as high. The bidder with the highest bid will win the right to show you an ad on the web page when the site is loading. So this process of bidding for your profiles on these ad exchanges, it takes milliseconds. But the process is extremely complex, and it involves hundreds of companies, as Wolfgang Crystal also showed in his diagram. It's many thousand companies, all involved in this process. And all major internet companies today have their own ad exchanges. Google, Microsoft, Yahoo, and later we will hear from Schibsted, because they're building up their own ad exchange to take on the competition from the global giants. So I will mention in our report, we mention several challenges with this market and how it functions. I will briefly mention 3 of them. Firstly, there's the lack of transparency. The market is described as a black box. Few people outside the industry have any real insight into how the industry works. And even professionals within the industry have no real oversight over the data flow between all the companies in the value chain. It is almost impossible for us to get a clear picture of what information is collected, how it is collected, how user profiles are built, how long user profiles are stored, and what information is traded between companies. And what we saw in our report was that no market players take a responsibility for informing users that their profiles are traded on these ad exchanges when they use the sites. And when we as users have no insight into how data is collected and how it is used, we cannot really evaluate the quality of the services. And we cannot value, we're not in a position to value a site with good privacy. So the information asymmetry leads to market failure, where the industry has no incentives to develop more privacy-friendly services because there are no real demand for them from the public. Instead, we witness a race to the bottom, where companies instead are encouraged to use increasingly invasive methods for collecting data. And secondly, it's a lack of choice. There's been a lot of talk about that this morning. But when you access a web service today, you're often met with the attitude of either you accept our terms and conditions or you're not welcome here. But if you base the collection of personal data on consent, the consent must be based on a genuine choice. So it's not fair to treat customers with an attitude of take it or leave it, because this practice undermines the very essence of consent. Consumers are small and powerless in the face of these huge global players. Consumers alone cannot dictate better terms and conditions. And that's why it's important for data protection authorities and together with consumer authorities to secure the rights of the individuals online. When you work with privacy, you are often challenged with the question or the attitude of, but does it really matter? Does it really matter that all these companies know everything about me? I have nothing to hide. But as citizens, we all have our vulnerabilities. Vulnerabilities that companies can use in order to trick us into buying their products. When we don't know what is going on behind the scene, we are more easy targets for hidden manipulation and discrimination. And we've seen examples, for instance, where ads for credit cards with high interest rates have been targeted to populations populations in poor neighborhoods, for instance. And we also see that the price discrimination is quite rife on the internet. Every 1 in 4 in Norway has experienced that they had to pay more for a hotel room online because they accessed from a Norwegian IP address. So price discrimination is rife, but it's very, very hard and difficult to detect because this practice goes on without us really knowing it. No companies really tells us openly that the price you're offered is based on where you live, how old you are, if you have checked the price for this product on price comparison sites, for instance, the price can go up. But according to the data protection legislation, companies need to inform you about the purposes for the data they collect. So if they use data from their users to steer pricing, they are obliged to inform you of that. So what is our message to the industry? Firstly, better privacy policies, more transparency, more policies that are easy to read and to understand. And why not try to inform in alternative ways by the use of icons, for instance. Icons telling you that this site uses profiling, for instance. And you can engage your users better, you can tell them how you use the data, and you can inform them what their profiles looks like in an informative way. And also it's important that owners of websites take responsibility for all the third-party players that are present on their sites and tracking their users. They need to inform which third parties are on the site and what they do there and which data they collect. And this is a hard job, because what we saw in our report, on average, 47 trackers are on an average Norwegian news site online. And you need to give your user a genuine choice. If I pay for access to an online newspaper, I should be able to say yes or no to having my data on my reading habits stored and used for marketing purposes. If I pay for access to a newspaper online, I should be able to say yes or no to having my location data stored, if it's not necessary for the service to collect those data. With the new privacy regulation from 2018, it will be much more difficult for companies to apply these take-it-or-leave-it models. Thirdly, companies engaged in profiling, they need to constantly evaluate their algorithms. Today there's a lot of talk about discrimination by algorithms. So companies need to evaluate their algorithms to see if they have unintentional effects. Do they perhaps discriminate against certain groups in society? And it is important that we set limits as to how long companies collecting data can store the data and use it to build profiles. Because the longer they can store the data, the more comprehensive and exhaustive profiles they can collect about us. And lastly, since we launched our report, we've seen the great value of working together with the consumer world and also with competition authorities. Also on EU level, there's been initiatives now to see how these two worlds can work better together. And there's been an initiative on the EU level to set up a digital clearinghouse where consumer authorities and DPAs can meet and exchange experiences and handle cases. And the Norwegian DPA will be one of the first DPAs to join this digital clearinghouse. And we are very happy to have such a good dialogue with Forbrukerrådet and with Forbrukerombudet. It's great that we work closely together, we exchange experiences, and we see that this is really important going forward, and this is how we can create better services in the future. Thank you.